You are listening to Leaders Unedited with Keogh.
Welcome back to another episode of Leaders Unedited. I'm your host, Margaret Mansfield, and with me I have another member of the Keogh team, Ian Geddes. Welcome, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret.
So you and I have known each other for quite a long time, but tell us a little bit about your experience and background in consulting.
Yeah, look, I started doing a lot of work around organisational culture, as you probably remember. I think that's where we first sort of met, and that led me, quite naturally into the leadership development space and helping leaders know exactly what to do in terms of changing culture. And I've also done an awful lot of work around profiling tools for selection and development.
Yes, I know it's been a bit of a labour of love for you building profiling tools, but that's one of the first pieces of work you did with me in terms of profiling for a high potential program, if you remember.
Yes, absolutely. We're assessing the best of the best for that development program.
And many of those folks have gone on to occupy some pretty big roles in Western Australia and beyond.
Yeah, I think it just shows when you put some effort into developing people where they can go and how successful they can be.
And the area of profiling has gained some renewed interest lately because a lot of organisations are looking for executive successes and looking at accelerating talent, particularly given the Great Resignation. But in all your years of profiling leaders, have you seen some common characteristics or qualities that are still as relevant today as they were many years ago?
Yeah, look, I think, probably one of the first things that I notice about all the great leaders is the passion, sort of like a one-eyed passion for achieving something in a business. And that seems to be quite a key. Obviously, we need people that are motivated to, I suppose, take charge and control of people. And we need people that are genuine. I tend to find the best leaders are quite genuine. They relate to people very well. And it helps them build a level of trust, with the individuals. So they're probably the main ones.
Yeah, so you're really big on trust, and that's been very prominent in the news lately around how trust has been broken or repaired or destroyed. What is some of the work you've done in that area with leaders? How do you go about helping them build trust?
Yeah, look, it is difficult, for people, but probably, the thing that I get people to understand is what behaviour you display that generates or invokes that trust from others. And if they can understand at that behavioural level, then they're on the road to, increasing and building, further trust. But it is, as I said, relates to being genuine and doing what you say you're going to do. Very much.
That's one of the biggest contributors to trust, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you've done a lot of work in the area of individual leader profiling, but one of the things you've been working on recently is measuring culture, which has, a lot of prominence in the media right now. How do you go about measuring culture?
Well, it's very much at a behavioural level. Quite simply. What is it that people are doing, because culture is all about, how we do things around here. So it's a question of what behaviours do people exhibit. So to accurately sort of measure it at a quantitative level, we need to understand the sort of behaviours that are people demonstrating and how frequently they demonstrate those behaviours. At a qualitative level, what's actually happening is quite different. We're still looking for behaviour, but it's actually talking to people, understanding and looking at the, what happens in the organisation.
Okay. And I know that apart from profiling, which you've spent a lot of time working on, you're really passionate about sports. It is a large part of your life. But you've done some work really shifting the cultures of a sporting club. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, look, there was an opportunity quite a few years ago now to be involved, I suppose, with my two sons' sporting sort of development. It started off in a cricket club, and I decided that I would coach them. And after a couple of weeks, I really did sort of question that decision, because I really wasn't sure what I was doing. And it wasn't so much about the coaching element of it, but it was more about where do I find fixtures, how do we, sort of manage this team and so forth. And, that experience got me involved in the club at the committee level. What I recognised is a lot of volunteers didn't have the support that they really sort of required. They were happy to go and do the work, but they needed a little bit of support and encouragement. So I put my hand up to be on the committee, and they asked me, what role do you want? And I said, well, I thought I'd do this thing called coaching coordinator. And they asked me what that was about, and I said, well, it's actually about supporting coaches and managers so that we can actually help the kids. And that was one of the keys behind that.
So it wasn't coaching around the technical skill, though. It was a different form of coaching.
It's really coaching the organisation in many, many regards, and really probably central to it was the development of the organisation in the whole. It wasn't just, just coaches and managers. It became, how do we actually, run the club? How do we run it efficiently? How do we support families, get them involved? And, all central to that was the kids having fun and actually learning.
You are listening to Leaders Unedited with Keogh.
So what were some of the specific things you put in place to make that happen?
Yeah, the first thing that I put in place was a number of training initiatives for the coaches. So there was a number of different courses that they could attend. So there was what was called a level 1 coaching course, which was run by the WACA at the time, the West Australian Cricket Association. And we also had an umpires course, because of course the coaches had to umpire. And I've got to say, when I first got involved, I was a bit rusty on the umpiring. But nevertheless, we put a lot of effort into actually developing the coaches and their knowledge. We then put a program in place to send high-level coaches around to all the teams when they were on their training days. And that was twofold. One, to develop not only the kids, but also help develop the coaches with drills and so forth. And we put a specialised one in for girls in particular, because what we recognised is they were probably sort of, from a developmental point of view, a little bit behind where the boys were generally at with cricket. So we really wanted to give them, a little bit of extra coaching, and that coaching extended into the season as well. So they're the main ones that we put in place.
And what were the outcomes? What actually happened?
Look, the club, which is sort of a blessing in disguise in some respects, but it went from 15 teams up to about 35 or 36 teams in the space of about 5 years. And, probably one of the key things, for me anyway, was that, the kids obviously stayed. They enjoyed it. They were having fun. And we had some, really sort of experienced coaches that kept on coaching every year. So they had the support from the club.
Sounds a bit like an employer of choice, really, if you think about organisations where, people are clamouring to join, an organisation. Sounds a little bit like that.
Yeah, we got a lot of recognition. We won Club of the Year. We won Female Volunteer of the Year in Australia. And that was one of our committee members who was really helping drive the development of girls cricket at that point. And we had the WACA approaching us all the time, wanting us to run this program or that program. And, one of the programs we're attempting to get up was cricket for deaf, kids. So, I left before we got that program up and running. But the fact was, I think the WACA recognised us as being quite a progressive, club.
Okay. And you had some great outcomes in terms of girls playing cricket, didn't you? That representation increased significantly.
Yeah, look, I think we had about 5 or 6 teams, and I think at that stage we were probably one of the biggest, or definitely the biggest girls cricket club in Perth, and one of the biggest in Australia.
Fantastic. And one of the things that we always focus on at Keogh is making changes sustainable. So it's not just while you were there that these things happened and due to your effort, but have those changes been sustained? Are they still successful?
Yeah, look, absolutely. One of the things that was key as far as I was concerned was having some structure and some processes in place particularly for the committee to follow. And getting the right people on the committee was another key for us. So, if you liken it to any business, you want to get the best people and you want to have the best sort of processes in place to support them, and that's really what we did. When I left as president, the incoming president, who is still there, is absolutely passionate and really driven, does a fantastic job.
So I take it you used your business skills to build a sporting club. So how are these skills that you used transferable? How do you use them in business?
Yeah, that's a good question. Coaching, and I used that very much in terms of development of the committee, as well as other coaches and managers. We'd run things like induction nights, so that new coaches and managers understood, how we went about the business of sort of coaching and managing a cricket team in this club. We gave them lots of support as well. So, a lot of, that induction night was really actually about coaching the coaches and coaching the managers and just helping them understand, where we want to go, as well as, the committee members. So coaching was one of them. I developed just a small little survey, which sort of harks back to the, wanting to assess things. But it was really about trying to get some feedback and understand where we were going as a club, what people wanted us to do differently or better, or and so forth. And we always found some really positive outcomes and just lots of words of thanks.
I suppose that's something we use in business all the time. We measure at the start of any of the work we do, and then we measure on an ongoing basis to check whether we're moving in the right direction. So
yeah, look, absolutely, and I think leadership was another key. As a committee, we provided some very clear messages right across the club. And we certainly tried to sort of reinforce, things like, support people, a family sort of orientation and so forth. So from a cultural point of view, we were trying to lead the way. And we were also trying to, develop and support people as we went.
Sounds like there are a fair bit of lessons businesses can learn from the sporting club. And I guess that's often why businesses look to sporting codes for inspiration, because what they do is essentially coach for high performance and then put systems in place to support people.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think if you look around the world, the most successful sporting clubs, and then look at their culture, what you'll recognise is the strength of their culture and the sustainability of that culture over a long period of time. So it's certainly, if businesses want to learn a lesson, have a look at some of those great sporting clubs that are around.
And speaking of culture, Ian, one of the activities that have been on the increase lately is mergers and acquisitions, and we are working with a number of clients who are in the midst of a merger or an acquisition, but culture is a really core component of making that successful, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it's probably not done particularly well given, 70% failure rate in terms of the mergers. I think, if you describe that as things not going well and the loss of people and so forth, when you think about it, you've got two businesses, and those businesses are people, and they have their way of doing things, and they need to be brought together in a mutually sort of beneficial, manner. So measuring culture of both of the organisations and working out what do we need to do to make this a successful transition is just a key.
You're listening to Leaders Unedited with Keogh.
So is that the process? We're working with an organisation undertaking a merger. What would be the first step that you would recommend they take then?
Absolutely, measuring the culture and understanding where they're at. Be that, we do it quantitatively with a survey and maybe even qualitatively to understand some of the nuances. That's part of it. But I think, ultimately you need a plan. And, an organisational development plan, is very clear about, the initiatives and the steps that you're going to take to ensure that sort of successful merger down the track. So culture certainly forms part of that, but there's other things that we need to look at as well, like the systems and processes of HR.
So how is that different because, we work with organisations that talk about an integration plan, and there are all these activities they would go through to make sure that, at least on a structural level or a procedures level or regulatory level, that merger happens. What do you mean by an organisational development plan? How's that different?
Well, it's very people orientated, and I think that's the fundamental difference. It's not about, the bits and pieces and the finances. It's all about the people and how can we get the people to work together and, maximise, the benefit for everyone.
So Ian, we've been talking a lot about culture. It's permeated throughout our conversation. But at Keogh, we have a particular way of looking and measuring a high-performing, flourishing culture. There are 3 dimensions we talk about. Can you just briefly describe what those are?
Yeah, look, I suppose we view culture in a business as an ecosystem. And in order for ecosystems to survive, they need to be adaptive. So that's one sort of higher level dimension that organisations need. Constantly adapting, new technology, change, the political landscape, let alone COVID. So adaptive is a very important aspect to it. I've said that culture is about people, so connective is the second, element, and people need to be connected, and it's not just people within the organisation, it's all the other stakeholders that are involved as well. And the final piece of the puzzle is being supportive. So supportive in terms of supportive of each other, but supportive of processes that are in place as well. So we look at those 3 dimensions with 12 elements sitting underneath them. Those elements are things like diversity and trust, collaboration, empowerment, and we have a 13th element, which is about purpose. And we see that as quite a central part of the culture. Where's that organisation going? So these elements are all about creating high performance, but also a really flourishing organisation.
It sounds like it's a really great snapshot of your business successes to date and the work that you've done.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. It was, whilst hard work at times, I really enjoyed the years that I spent in the sporting club.
Thanks so much, Ian, for talking to me today. I know we talk a lot informally, but it's really good to kind of unpick your experience, and we'll be hearing more from you in our future episodes.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret.